So you did allow me to go to the school for the deaf, and I made that transfer. And it was a very stimulating environment. It was sink or swim. I really was just immersed in the deaf culture with classmates who could sign, and I just had to sink or swim.
It was the hardest thing we've ever had to do,
Yeah.
was to leave her at the deaf school. But we realized that it would be the best for her, and the house parent was a sweet, dear black lady, and she tried so hard to help us feel good about leaving Ashley there. But we came home, and of course it was just devastating to us. But when we'd see Ashley, we'd be happy that she was enjoying the school life there. But we did encourage her to use her speech. She learned sign language quickly, and when she came home, she wanted to sign. We didn't know sign language. It was foreign to us, and we just encouraged her to use her speech. We hired a speech therapist for home during the summer. Every summer that she was home, we'd have a speech therapist come and work with her 2 or 3 days a week. And she did use her speech right on through high school. She has a beautiful voice. She thinks she doesn't, but I still like to hear her use her speech.
Yes. I know that was the hardest thing for you and Dad both, but you allowed me to go to the deaf school, which allowed me to learn sign language, and that was really the best gift that you ever gave me. Later in life, when I learned that I had Usher's syndrome, which meant that I would begin losing my sight as well, I mean, now I don't see well enough to read lips, and I don't hear well enough to follow dialogue or speech. So signing is truly the best gift you ever gave me. You saved me by allowing me to go to the school for the deaf and to learn sign language. That was the best choice for me, and I'm happy.
We went to Gallaudet University. We took Ashley. She was 8 or 9 years old, and we were there for a week for a family learning vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to workshops during the day with other parents, and Ashley was being evaluated by specialists. And that's where we learned that Ashley had Usher syndrome. Back then, I don't even think we had a telephone at home, but that was a long time ago. But she wrote her daddy a letter, and he couldn't go because we were farmers. And she said, "Daddy, I'm deaf. I'm going deaf, and I'm getting blind also." And it was just devastating to us because we had never heard of Ushers. So I learned at that family learning vacation that a deaf-blind child could become a very successful deaf-blind adult with the proper training. So we started doing everything we could do, exposing her to everything we could. Of course, some of these things I took her to, she did not want to go. She read a book the whole time we were there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She just went because we made her. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It didn't help that I was stubborn. I was very resistant. I do remember that you tried to expose me to as much as possible and to other adults who were deaf and deafblind. But in the Deafblind Project. But some of it was maybe that they were older than me or they had more vision loss than me. And it wasn't until later when I met a deafblind woman who was more my age did I kind of accept myself, this identity.
Right.
But prior to that, I felt like I didn't fit. They didn't feel the same as me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is AJ. All right, question number 2. How were you made to feel growing up, and how did your mom feel?
how did I feel? Talking about feelings. Really, I was consider myself a hard of hearing child growing up. I was able to speech read, lip read, I was able to talk for myself, so I was really hard of hearing. And when I entered the school for the deaf and started socializing with my deaf classmates and my deaf teachers and other deaf adults, then I became more comfortable with my identity as a deaf person. And I began interacting more within the deaf community and really accepting deafness as my culture and my identity. I was able to communicate, and they were the same as me, my classmates and my teachers and these role models. But then when I was diagnosed as having Usher's syndrome, I felt very alone. I was the only student that had Usher's syndrome. There were a few other students who maybe had some vision loss, but I didn't necessarily relate to them or identify the same with them. And so I felt very lonely, depressed, angry. I was resistant, started acting out. If teachers were trying to provide me with additional resources or support, I denied them because I wanted to be the same as my peers. I wanted to be just deaf. And I didn't want the additional identity of blindness. And so that was my experience for the rest of my education. And then I went into college, I got my bachelor's degree, but still I was very much in denial of the fact that I had Usher's syndrome. And at that point I was starting to lose my vision. At night I struggled at night being able to see, and I just would kind of play it off like I was okay. And again, stubbornness. My husband offered, whoa, can we hold? I made a mistake. I would really like to back up if she'll just start again with with Ken asking for the proposal. Is that okay? Yep, go ahead. I was very resistant. When my husband proposed to me, I was thinking about what would my future look like as a deaf-blind person. Would I be fully blind? And would we start a family one day? Would I be a mother? I was really struggling with what my future would look like. Would I be dependent on my husband? So that's really what got me thinking about my future and what capabilities and possibilities were there for me. And so I began opening myself to the idea of going to the Helen Keller Center, National Center. I had a VR counselor at that time, so we talked about the possibility of doing an internship while also taking training at Helen Keller National Center, because I needed to do an internship anyway to graduate. And so I went, and it was an amazing experience. It was really one of the best things I've ever done. I met other deaf-blind people the same age as me. I met someone who became both a friend and a mentor, and we're still in touch today. We were the same age, and she was a strong, independent woman, and I realized that I could do the same. And she had Usher's just like me, and I felt very inspired. So that was sort of the change of my mindset, and I realized that I can be successful, and I was proud and began accepting my identity as a deaf-blind individual. And I also realized that there were other people like me. I think that was key to accepting and moving on.
During Ashley's teenage years, I know we were in denial because we couldn't see the vision loss. We bought her a car when she turned 16. I think she washed it 3 times in 1 week. A pretty little red car. I think she had it about 2 weeks and she had a terrible accident. She turned in front of a car. She just did not see it coming. She never offered to drive again. her daddy and I were so concerned about, well, how are we gonna not let her drive? You know, we just can't take her license. But she never offered to get in the car again. We sold the car, or no, the car was totaled and we got the money, and it was a thing of the past and we had to accept it. But when Ashley went to Helen Keller, she made a big change. She came back, she was gone a year, and I went to New York several times to see her. But I could see she was just blossoming up there and just gonna make a really big change. And she met this lady that she's still a friend with, and her whole attitude had changed when she came back. So I realized that the struggles that we went through trying to show her everything and get her the proper training as a child, that she was going to carry that on. She was doing everything in her power to become successful and succeed in life. So I felt like that, you know, we had done all we could do at that point, and we had to just let her take over and do what she wanted to. But remembering back about her younger days, I really feel blessed that we had the opportunity to meet some of the people that we have met, because today there's 6 of the mothers of the deafblind children. Some of the children we never see, but the parents get together at least once a year and for a couple of days, and we have a very tight bond.
All right, question number 3. What has been your experience with audiologists growing up and as an adult? And what has been your mom's experience with audiologists?
I think that I'm fortunate. I have a good relationship with my audiologist, and really the audiologist that I use now is the same one from my childhood, Dr. Jim. He's a sweet man. He's not near my hometown, and so we have to make a drive, but it's worth the travel because of the relationship that we have. And Mom, you trust him, and he always gave us time and sat and talked with us. I remember being a little girl and watching my parents talk to him. I had no idea what they were talking about, and when he worked with me, he really gave me his time and his attention, and we had fun. I used to love when he would make the mold, the ear mold for my hearing aid, and we would make it in bright colors like pink, and I liked the way it smelled. And he would give me the mold when it was done, and I would play with it. So we developed a very good relationship, and I continued going to him all the way through my college years. But I have a new audiologist now who's a little bit closer to my home. And I picked an audiologist who I can communicate with. So my audiologist signs. They got their degree from Gallaudet University, and I love that I can communicate directly with my audiologist in sign language. And then if there's an emergency, I'm able to text him and respond, and he can respond immediately. I can. So it's great to have that relationship and that communication and that access directly with my audiologist. So that's my experience. How about you?
As Ashley said, we did become very good friends with her first audiologist. He was a young guy. And every time I see him now, he says, "How's my girl?" And I try to catch him up and tell him she's doing fine, and about our family and things. But we're really good friends now. And actually, he was in another town. We have to drive a distance, but he does have an office in our town now, and I do see him often. The thing that frustrated me so much with audiologists was they would use acronyms. And I didn't know a thing about it. He'd say, well, maybe you should go to DPI, or she's gonna need an IEP and stuff like that. Well, I had never been exposed to stuff like that, and I hated to ask questions, so I'd leave there just so frustrated and not knowing what he was talking about. So I hope that the audiologists today are more prepared to help these young hurting parents. If you say go to a DPI, say Department of Public Instruction, so they'll know, because just going into it, they don't realize what these acronyms are, and it's frustrating to them.
Yeah. Talking about tips for audiologists, I was thinking about communication. If you're in a profession working with deaf and hard of hearing people with hearing loss, then you need to be able to communicate with them. And that means that you should learn sign language, or at least know some of the different communication tools and strategies. For me, as a person who has both vision loss and hearing loss, cultural sensitivity is key, and so an audiologist being aware of that is crucial. And also asking the patient what will work for them. Like, my audiologist knows that when I make an appointment and I'm going to be coming into his office, he needs to wear a black shirt so that I can understand him clearly. And also that maybe he needs to sign with me using the tactile method. So, he knows what works for me and is willing to work with me to make our communication successful. He knows to let me know before he turns the lights off, things like that. Also, I can text him, and I have before, saying I'm getting ready to come to your office. I'm not sure how to get into the office from the parking lot, and he'll come meet me in the parking lot and guide me into his office. So understanding the population that you serve and having strategies to communicate effectively with them is probably my biggest tip.
This is AJ. Okay, we ready for the fourth question? What would you want to tell audiologists today about how to best work with and communicate with individuals who are deaf-blind?
Well, I think Ashley has summed that up, and I feel so comfortable with her going to this audiologist. I don't even go with her anymore. Ken takes her, and she's always had a very pleasant experience, and for the reasons that she has just said is the best way that they can work with their clients.
Yeah. I mean, and if a patient is not able to explain what they need, and the audiologist feels like they need more training, then it's important that you contact local resources like the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, because they offer awareness trainings and communication tips so that you can work effectively with deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind populations. I know there's also a training called Different World, which allows you to put yourself in the shoes of a deaf or deaf-blind person for a short period of time and experience some of the challenges and frustrations of interacting. So it's important that you continue to grow your knowledge about how to work with these populations.
All right, this is AJ. So now we'll do the last question.